Hello, hello. Good evening, you little lefties. How are we doing tonight? It is lovely to see you all again and welcome you back to the debrief from Turn Left. So, if you haven't joined the debrief before, this is where we unpack a little bit more of the news from the week. We cover most of it in the three other shows that we do. However, there's stuff that comes out over the weekend, and there's also topics that we want to dive into in a little bit more detail. Before I get into what those topics are for tonight, I'm very excited to welcome our wonderful guests joining us this evening. We have the lovely Daviemoo, friend of the show, and we have Tariye Peterside joining for first time. Hello, hello.
Hi.
Hello.
How are we both?
Yeah, surviving, getting there. Like I told you guys earlier, like I'm in the final days of a phlegmy cough. So yeah, doing all right, hanging in there.
Excellent. Strong. And Davie, how you doing?
Thriving as always. You can barely contain my excitement at life, as you can imagine.
Well, it's great to have such enthusiasm on the show with us today from yourself. So we've got three topics that we looked at for today. We want to go into a little bit more detail on, I believe it was only 2 days ago that the UN Special Committee found that Israel's actions in Gaza are aligned to the definition of genocide, and particularly the US response to it. We're also going to be talking about the treaty and the bill behind the incredibly viral video this week of the Haka being done in the New Zealand Parliament, and what that bill actually entails, what the actual protests are around. I feel like everybody's seen the video, but we don't know that much about the story behind it. So we're going to have a look at that. And also the kind of rhetoric that's being used there in order to attempt to sort of delegitimize Indigenous rights in the name of equality. So we'll talk that through. And then we are also, for anyone who hasn't seen it, very excited about this groundbreaking new advert from Boots. I haven't seen it yet, but I imagine it must be extremely controversial. It could be, I don't know if Hamas is mentioned or what it is, but it's caused like a huge amount of outrage from what I've heard. So I'm expecting something pretty revolutionary on that. But we'll be having a look at that as well. Before we do begin, I just want to do a quick thank you to everybody who supports the channel, everybody who's watching now, everybody who watches the replays. If you're not watching us in real time, we still appreciate you. Everybody who shares and engages, and in particular our YouTube members, our Patreon members. We're still a fully voluntary channel. Everything that we do is done by people because we care about it. Our lovely guests who are joining us because they care about the topics that we're talking about. And yeah, any kind of support that you can give, anything that you can do, whether it's a one-off donation, sharing, or just keeping it active in the chat is like really appreciated. If you do want to support us in any kind of financial way, you can support us over at turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. With that plug done, I think it would be good for us to jump into the first topic. We're going to start with the latest from the UN Special Committee. Now, I want to show, before we do the video, actually, I want to go through some of the key findings from the Special Committee's report. So just to be clear, this came out a few days ago from the United Nations Special Committee to investigate Israeli practices affecting the human rights of the Palestinian people and other Arabs of the occupied territories. So this Special Committee is not like a recent thing. They were established in December 1968 in order to examine the human rights situation in the occupied Syrian Golan, the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Gaza Strip. So the report that came out included a few of these key points, which I'm going to pull up for us now. So the first section that was covered from the report: since the beginning of the war, Israeli officials have publicly supported policies that strip Palestinians of the very necessities required to sustain life, food, water, and fuel. These statements, along with the systematic and unlawful interference of humanitarian aid, make clear Israel's intent to instrumentalize life-saving supplies for political and military gains. On top of this, we have Despite repeated UN appeals, binding orders from the International Court of Justice, and resolutions of the Security Council, Israel is intentionally causing death, starvation, and serious injury, using starvation as a method of war, and inflicting collective punishment on the Palestinian population. On top of this, we have the acts of destroying vital water, sanitation, and food systems, and contaminating the environment, which the committee says shows that Israel has created a lethal mix of crises that will inflict severe harm on generations to come. On top of this, we have the Israeli military's use of AI-assisted targeting with minimal human oversight, combined with heavy bombs being dropped on Gaza, which the committee says underscores Israel's disregard of its obligation to distinguish between civilians and combatants and take adequate safeguards to prevent civilian deaths. And on top of this, we have the misinformation and media silencing that has been happening. The deliberate silencing of reporting, combined with disinformation and attacks on humanitarian workers, is a clear strategy to undermine the vital work of the UN, sever the lifeline of aid still reaching Gaza, and dismantle the international legal order. Now, I don't know, for me, that feels like a pretty clear checklist of the things that would comprise a genocide. It almost feels like every single thing in the outlines of what would actually count as genocide under the UN's definition. Pretty much in agreement.
Yeah, more or less. It seems like a really like a comprehensive, like itemized list of going through everything from people's access to food, to water, to shelter, to what they're doing with the environment, to even people's access, people's ability to access natural water resources. I'm sure we've all by now seen in the last like what 13 or more months of this been going on. Like we've seen videos of settlers pouring cement in natural springs. So yeah, this is like genuinely an ecological issue, not just in terms of like the environmental cost of like dropping bombs and all the rest of it. Like, so yeah, this is a fairly like comprehensive list.
Yeah, I feel like it covers off a fair. It's pretty well researched, pretty well documented. I feel like I've seen almost like evidence of almost all of these things, and I'm at home. One of the things that I thought was interesting was the mention of AI assisted targeting as well. Like the fact that I've not thought of that in the sense of this is a pretty clear indication that they're literally letting AI do it. It's like having like a self driving tank. There's no minimal human oversight involved within that as well. But I think, Davey, can I assume that you're also aligned? Like we're all pretty much on the same page. Feels like it
Yeah.
makes sense. It'd be
Yeah,
it'd be pretty wild if you came in like actually.
well, I think, well, I mean, but this is the thing. Even if you did at this point, right? There's two situations that you can believe, which is this is intentional and it's being done to set this stuff up and cause this absolute disaster, or international law is so crap that it allows them to act in this way that's screwing everything over. And so we do need to look at a change in international law. Neither
Yeah.
of those make the whole situation look good, because it's either you're purposely destroying everything and you don't care about international law, or international law isn't comprehensive enough to prevent you from not only committing a plausible genocide, but destroying the ecology of the area.
Yeah. I didn't even know about the term ecocide until last year. But it was something like the amount of bombs that were dropped between October and December, like the climate damage done in that period was more than like some of the 20 nations that are under the greatest threat from like climate change over the next few years would normally be able to put out in a year. It is massive, but so I could assume that none of us would say that any of those claims are unfounded, because that'd be a wild thing to say.
Yeah.
You would think. Anyone in the chat? I don't think anyone in the chat thinks that they're unfounded. No, looks like everybody's. Yeah, we're all pretty much on the same page. Well, what if the US thought it was unfounded? I am going to show
Shocker.
the.
Shocker. What do you mean?
I know it would be almost crazy at this point to call it unfounded, and yet here we are. So this is a short clip from The Guardian, which includes the Deputy State Department spokesperson Vedant Patel speaking to journalists. So I'm just going to pull this up now.
What do you think of this UN commission's?
Let me get to the second part of your question first. As it relates to the UN commission, I've seen some of that reporting, and we've seen some language coming out of that indicative of their belief that some of the actions could be constituted as, this is their phrasing, genocide. That is something we would unequivocally disagree with. Again, we think that that kind of phrasing and those kinds of accusations are certainly unfounded.
Are you saying that all accusations against Israel are unfounded?
No, what I'm saying is the accusation of genocide, specifically in that UN commission,
Yeah.
those accusations are unfounded.
So I don't know what we do at this, like what there is to say, to be honest, to that kind of comment. Like they use the characterization of unfounded, and their accusations within that, not the term genocide is unfounded. The actual things that they've been documented as having done, they're characterizing that as unfounded. Like I don't know what I want to report on it because I think we should cover it, but I genuinely don't know, aside from just like screaming, I don't know what there is to say at this point.
You know the phrase history is written by the victors?
Mm-hmm.
This is us watching this type of thing happen in real life as people that clearly have the upper hand and narrativizing out the truth. And that's why this is so scary, because it is literally, I know everyone references 1984, like I feel like I should have a checklist for every time I open my phone for who's referencing George Orwell now, but they asked you not to believe the truth of your eyes. Like, I've watched settlers beating up like Palestinians off their land. I've watched all of these things that total ecocide, genocide, like displacement and ethnic cleansing and all of that. And all the while, all these prominent figures are like, oh, no, don't believe that. And the issue is it's going to have a really scary impact on what's going to happen in America over the next 4 years, because they've just implemented psychodom. And so when we're hearing things from America about how terrible things are, can we even believe? Like, can we believe you? Can we believe that it's as bad as you say it is, or is it worse than you saying it is? America is just the nation that doesn't know how to tell the truth.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, more or less. And like David described, it's a bizarre kind of like it's almost like I'm going to say the term gaslighting, even though that has been like done to death. Everyone is overusing it, even when they just mean lying. But here's the thing: this is actually genuinely what the term is referencing. It is genuinely trying to make all of us like doubt the reality, doubt what we are seeing, doubt what we're witnessing, doubting what people who are there on the ground experiencing it are telling the rest of the world, are telling all of us. Right?
I mean, do you remember at the very beginning, just after October 7th, where it was like it became really big on social media? Like Palestinians were like, we just want people to share what's happening. And I also at that point in time, I knew, like I'd known about Palestine for a really long time. I'd sort of disconnected from politics and everything for like 2 years when I was in university because I was being an alcoholic, to be honest, and just got distracted. But like coming back into it, I did believe at that point in time, like, okay, if we share this enough, like if this is shown enough, something will happen. Something will stop this, like, right? And like I feel like I was very disillusioned with the system already in like October 2023. So I don't know what I was expecting, but it is absolutely wild. I know everyone keeps repeating the thing of it being a heavily, like the most documented, like a live streamed genocide, basically. I don't know, like from that point where it was like, people aren't talking about it. We need people to talk about it. People are talking about it. They're sharing it. I think Middle East Eye literally have like a 5-minute TikTok clip compilation of war crimes happening, like video recordings. And we're now at the point where it is just like, oh, it just doesn't, like, what do you do at that stage? Like nothing comes out of it. Jacqueline has said in the chat, this is an example of Tariye. That is not a fair way to have that chat appear over the top of you. I'm sorry, that's a framing issue.
It's fine. It's fine. Hang on. Here we go.
If we're like leaning over the top of
Here we go.
I'll swap you and Davey around at one point or something, so it's like a fair rotation.
All right.
But Jacqueline has said, this is an example of someone saying something so outrageous that people are spluttering for a response at the sheer neck of it. Like, that's the thing with that clip. Like,
yeah.
how do you reply?
Yeah, this is the thing. It's kind of like, and I suppose the reason, one of the reasons that it is so shocking is not just that like it's an obvious like people telling us not to believe our lying eyes, even though we're all seeing and witnessing and everything else and sharing all of the information that's coming out of Palestine. Like it's not just that. It's also the fact that like what is it? It's in terms of the reporting and the way like people are saying that, oh, it's unfounded and everything else. It's like we're kind of watching. I don't know if you guys have seen, it's called like the death of euphemism, because before it would just sort of be, it would be just sort of like vague terminology. It would be vague things. It would just be like before October 7th, it would just be sort of vague things of, oh, well, it's so complicated. Well, it's this. Like, well, it will be all this other kind of like obfuscating language that's sort of meant to keep people, that is sort of like a thought killer phrase. It's sort of meant to keep people just go, what am I going to do? It's so complicated. It must be beyond me, to the point
Yeah.
where people don't look any further. And now they've kind of abandoned that technique. And now they're like, well, there's no denying what people are seeing. There's no denying all of the evidence. There's no denying all of the video, the tweets, the TikToks, the everything. There's no denying all of this. But now the best we can sort of do is, I guess, kind of, what is it, like exhaust people with it almost? Kind of
Yeah.
like rely on how exhausted and not disenfranchised, disempowered and like disillusioned everyone is feeling, and just sort of like rely on that to create its own form of like political inertia. And so when they now say things like, oh yeah, there's no grounding for that, or it's unfounded, or whatever else, people just go, huh? What? But and then we are all just sort of left like stuttering, and then like they just carry on in the aftermath of everyone stuttering.
Yeah. No, it feels a bit like a con man
Mm.
thing of like, if you just say it with enough confidence. Like, I think, I can't remember which friend of mine it was telling me the other day, like, about, like, they had a friend whose dad was a businessman, and he would literally, like, sit in the wrong seats in a plane, and people would be like, sorry, I think that's my seat. And he'd just go, no, this is my seat. And and people would be so confused by, like, how blatantly not true it was, that people would go, like, oh, okay. Like, because people go, oh, well, they wouldn't do that, would they? Like, that would be wild for someone to try and deny something at that stage. But it's just like, it just, the sheer weight of it is like, well, we think it's unfounded. You can't, like, other than going, really? It feels like there's not that much you can say.
I think another thing about it though as well is like I talked about this the other day. There's this whole thing of like they're all the same in politics, and that kind of like, because we discussed it, didn't we? Like the numb-brainedness of it all.
Hmm.
That's a really crap take, but they're too similar is something like this is the perfect proof. We're told, look at these examples of liars like Trump and Farage, and look how obvious and brazen their lies are. And then here's the good guys being like, what? What's happened? What? Sorry, I can't. What do you mean? Well, I don't think. And it's like, guys, this is why there's a crisis in trust, because of you, just as much as the crazy, like you are doing the things that the crazy people do, and then being like, but we're very different. It's like you are
Totally
causing the problems that you are. It's crazy.
Even like, I was actually, when I was looking at the coverage of the UN Special Committee report, the BBC have not covered it as UN Special Committee finds that it fits the definition of genocide. They have covered it in a far more diluted way, which, if I just try and quickly look at that, because I think I had it saved in here, they had said that a human rights monitor had accused Israel of war crime. War crime.
Yeah, this is what they do. They just sort of, we in fairness, after like the last year or more of coverage, we expect this from BBC and Sky,
Yeah.
like doing a lot of passive language, and the passive language is doing a lot of heavy lifting, an inordinate amount of heavy lifting. And if it's not exactly passive language, it's, I'm going to bend and contort everything as far as I can, just to be extra conciliatory to
Yeah.
Israel.
It's that, or just not say anything. I mean, I don't know when the last time was that Keir Starmer issued a statement on Israel. I know that David Lammy did partly also criticize Israel. No, they urged restraint on around Israel in terms of their targeting of UN peacekeepers and like the UNRWA. That was it. It was when UNRWA were banned in Israel, they made a joint statement with 7 other countries to say, we don't think this is okay. But then they also urged them to focus on their own reform, to be impartial. And it was within the whole state. It was an oral statement within Parliament that also included all of the, obviously coming down very hard on Iran and saying that they shouldn't be doing anything, and that they'll use sanctions and they'll use this and this. And it was such a stark contrast because they had put so much stuff in saying what they were going to do to make sure Iran wasn't able to respond. And then it said, and also obviously we urge restraint. I don't think he knows what urging is. I don't think he knows how to urge correctly, because I've urged before and I've been you'd be pretty forceful with an urging if you actually want to try for it. Let's have a quick look at a couple of the messages in the chat. You've gone back down. I'll go down as well.
It's fine. It's fine.
It's only me.
Of course.
It's the Daviemoo show.
I'm just blocked. We're both just blocked by the chat, and it's just
fine. No, hang on. If I do this, it's cute.
I like that. Scottish Soul has said, I can only think of a singular, tiny, minuscule silver lining. All these loopholes are exposing here. We can make note of and hopefully get closed up. I don't know. I think that's a tricky one because I don't know if there's any I don't know if they're loopholes. That felt like an unfounded claim that was unfounded. There was no...
Especially because it just sort of highlights again and again and again and again. It never seems to matter how much the UN or the whole of the international community seems to like sort of amass, gather evidence, sort of and do everything that they can to keep up with all of the goalpost shifting. They say, well, we have no evidence. So they go, okay, fine, we will gather evidence. They gather and present the evidence and say, nope, we have found it to be unfounded. So saith we, because now we're the arbiters of the evidence. And like...
The what? I don't know where it is. Like, it's so...
I think the thing is, because I talked about this week, like the way that Keir Starmer like trusts institutions that he clearly shouldn't. We had this whole story, story that shook the Church of England. Like, oh my God, a paedophile ring in the church, unprecedented territory here. And when Keir Starmer was asked at COP28, what do you think should happen? He was like, well, the church needs to decide whether that person should be. It's like the church that covered up this child sex ring. And then with this, every single they're like, we've heard disturbing reports that Israel's done something bad. So obviously we've done the sensible thing and gone, Israel, are you doing something bad? Well, they've said no. So we're actually satisfied. And it's like, at what point do you go, and that's the thing. We reached this point months ago where even the most kind of like, well, I really do believe, blah, blah, blah. We've reached a point now where it's like, either you guys are like painfully stupid, or you obviously know it's crap and you expect us to keep buying it. Like, we're not stupid. Either you are or you think we are. There is no good outcome there, babes. Which is it?
I like that framing.
Yeah, and regarding what you said about Keir Starmer and his trust in institutions, of course he's going to trust institutions. He is a man built and sustained entirely by institutions. Of course he puts trust in them. Like, it's like, well, because if you're on the receiving end of all of like this bountiful beneficence from these institutions, of course you're going to think that they're on the up and up, and of course they're great, and of course they're wonderful, and of course, like, well, if they put a foot wrong, I'm sure it must have just been a little bit of human error, and I'm sure they can work it out, guys. And it's just a bit like,
yeah, you would trust it. It's like the equivalent. It's like the systemic equivalent of being like, well, he's always seemed really nice to me.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Like, it's like they think Israel is run by the fucking Chuckle Brothers. Like, what is going on over there? Like, if I worked with a colleague and they just like, I kept seeing small grade nuclear explosions coming from their office, there's going to come a point where I'm going to be like, I feel like I might just need to go in there and be like, are you all right? What's going on? Are you all right? But they're just like, yeah, no, we trust them completely. And it's like, okay, well then
They've always seemed fine. They've always been really nice to us.
Well, you know why that is, though? It's because of like it's because of a lot of Europe's historical guilt around the
Mm.
Holocaust, because
Yep.
they know that when a lot of the evidence came out in the aftermath of the Holocaust, in the aftermath of World War II, they realized and saw the extent of how bad it was. And a lot of countries like the UK, like the US, had been denying refugees entry, had been denying Jewish refugees entry. And they
Yeah.
and they still feel the sting of that guilt. That's why they're doing this, because they're trying in their own clumsy, horrible, roundabout way to make up for their sins during like the Second World War and in the immediate aftermath. And so they've decided, oh no. Given how guilty we are for the fact that we allowed Hitler to run roughshod over your entire community and kill 6 million of you across the entire continent, we're just going to give you carte blanche to do whatever the hell you want. Yes, you can be a settler. Yes, you can. Yes, you can kick people off their land. Yes, you can do whatever the hell you want with absolute impunity, because we're sorry that we allowed this to happen to you. And it's like,
the whitewashing of how the British government treated Jewish refugees is crazy, and that's
yeah,
it's something that I try and talk about a lot when people are talking about asylum seekers today. Is like, literally, you could go back to like 1938, 1940, and there's the Daily Mail saying so-called refugees, they're fake refugees, they're not actually refugees, they're economic migrants. Like, they've been doing this for almost 100 years, and they were probably doing it before then as well, actually, to be fair. But
exactly.
they
And
they've always done. People were put in internment camps in the UK. Like, they were literally rounded up overnight, and we seem to still be like, no, we really did our part, and we feel terrible. Like,
Well,
it's
this
infuriating.
my favorite thing was I read the other day. I refreshed myself on a couple of bits of history that I'd read, and there was this whole thing. There was this burgeoning movement across the US and the UK that when reports were coming out about what the Nazis were doing, apparently people were saying, "Well, that's just anti-German sentiment," and it's like, no. But the thing is, as well, following this train of thought, what's it going to be like 60 years down the line when like things will come to light and things will change. I know, like I'm have to be convinced that it will change. What's it going to be like 60 years down the line when there's refugees from Palestine? What are they going to be allowed to get away with? It's like you're compounding something. Confront the stuff now. Stop with the like, I'm so sorry for the thing, because you are making it worse by living in that kind of mindset. Own it and say we did bad things, and now you're doing bad things, and we need to interrupt. But they can't conceive of it because of the way that society is structured, and especially the way that the West is structured on
Yeah,
perpetrating these things.
yeah,
it
but
is.
also, Davy, I hate to look, I don't want to shit in anybody's cornflakes order. Can we swear on here? Sorry.
No,
Oh,
I'm joking.
it's too
No, you
late now.
can.
That's
You
it.
can swear as much as you want. Curtis is normally the host, so I wouldn't worry.
Basically, I was going to say, like, regarding what you said about, well, what if it's 60, 70 years down the lines, like, what are they going to, in the name of making up for a historical wrong, what are they going to allow Palestinians to get away with? The gag is, it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. A key component of a lot of this is racialization. A lot of
Yep.
this
Yes.
down to the fact that this is a sort of easy out for a lot of like the anti-Arab, anti-Islamic like feeling across basically most of continental Europe and the
I
United
mean,
Kingdom as well. And this
what?
is like an easy out for it and say, well, see, we're not being anti-Muslim, we're not being anti-Islam, we're not being anti-Arab. Look at what they're doing to those poor Jewish people over there. And it's like, you're presenting this as a form of justified violence.
I mean,
Yeah.
look at Iran. Like, Iran was doing pretty good until we had the US involvement, and the installation of the Shah in the
And
70s, when we had the religious revolution, basically. And then at this point now, I can't do maths at all, 50 something years on, we have people going, well, Iran are a threat. Look at their religious fundamentalists. Like, how did that happen? We have no idea how that happened, but they're a terrifying threat. It's like, same with like funding the Taliban, and then going, oh no, guys, they're really dangerous. This is terrible. We have to do something. It's always it does repeat in that sense.
yeah, it does. And it's always regarding things like the Occidental countries always have to wind up like confronting like monsters of their own making, because it was same like you said with them funding the Taliban. That actually started with back when they were the Mujahideen and,
Yeah,
then,
yeah, yeah.
and everything else, and they funded them because they thought, aha, we can get them to fight the godless commies to tackle the red peril that's sweeping across the world. Like, and from there, we see the results of funding the Mujahideen. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's completely yes. It was. Yeah, it was the installation of the Shah. I think in the early 70s. I will double check if I'm completely wrong on that. But it's this constant involvement. It's like Biden said, if Israel didn't exist, we'd have to create a new one. There's like strategic value to these things as well. I think I did just want to drop in the chat for this because I know we want to cover Palestine a lot. We want to cover what's happening a lot, and the most infuriating thing at the moment is just the absolute silence that we're getting from, especially the mainstream media. So I don't know. I wanted to put in like a couple of actions that people can do as a reminder. I know somebody mentioned in the chat about reminders to write to your MP. That was from Katie Marshall, which was very appreciated. She's coming up. Educating the
Glad to
masses.
know.
Email our MPs, get them to move the government position. It's easy to contact your MP. I think on top of that, I wanted to do a reminder of the No Thanks app, which is a really, really easy way to keep up to speed with BDS and which brands you might be wanting to avoid. I will say on top of that, when you're in terms of boycotting, like it's good to passively boycott in some way, just to not be purchasing products from these brands. But also, what makes that a lot more powerful is like loudly boycotting it. So I went into a shop with a friend of mine the other day, and she went, "Oh, is this shop?" And I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "Oh, I don't shop here. I'm boycotting," like very loudly inside the store. And making sure that, if it's products that you would normally use and you're not using, writing to the brands, writing to the shops that are stocking them. So I wanted to drop the No Thanks app in. Tariye, Davie, I don't know if either of you wanted to suggest an action or a thing that you've been thinking on a little bit more at the moment that people could do.
I like to just tell people to like speak to your not politically engaged friends about it, because if you have an in with people like that, I mean, I don't, if I know anyone that's not interested in politics, I don't know them because that's weird, but just having those
Don't know where they
conversations,
are.
right? Like having those conversations with people is so key, and not shrinking away from it. Like that we do have to keep pushing, because people get fatigued, and I don't necessarily blame them for the fatigue, but at the same time, it's like, right, but you are doing the right thing, and I get that you feel exhausted, but don't stop, don't like carry on with what you're doing. I think it's just about continuing to keep the narrative fresh and remind people of the like actual horrors that we're seeing. That's my main thing.
I don't know. Like, I would just say, well, because these are all really great actions. For me, I don't know. I would just invite people to remember the interconnectedness of all of it, the interconnectivity of a lot of things, because these issues, because it can feel like it's this one issue over here, then it's this other issue over there, and then it's that other issue further afield, when actually a lot of it is interconnected. A lot of it is bound up with each other, not just historically, but in terms of actions now. Like, so we're seeing the ramifications in terms of what's happening in one country's elections, or in terms of how the news media in another country is reporting something, and also in terms of their historical relationships. So I would just invite people to, like, when they're going through their information, when they're educating themselves, trying to educate others as well, just try and like look for the connections, look for the ways in which things connect, look for the ways in which multiple other issues are bound up in it, just as a means of, I don't know, being a bit more mindful, being a bit more intentional. Also, just like, I don't know, I'm still, can you tell I'm very new to a lot of like activism and organizing? I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do, guys. Stay informed. Remember this. Like,
Support. Do something.
Do things.
Why isn't anybody doing anything? I think you're.
Like,
That's
yeah,
such
I
a
just
strong
feel
point.
like, and I feel like with people, it's like, also like, use whatever actually, this is the thing, use whatever methods are at your disposal, and whatever information and little points of information that as a means of drawing people in. Like, I always like, because a lot of people, my first degree is in theology and religious studies, right? So basically, I happen to know about a lot of like evangelical theology, because there are a lot of British evangelicals on my course. right? As well as a bunch of other like regular
Oh my God, I
Christians
didn't
as
even think
well.
about that.
But this is the thing. This is the weird kind of like feedback loop that this country is in with the United States. Because I said it as well. Like these countries, like they share actual DNA and political DNA as well as religious DNA, and so I use that information that I have from that first degree to tell people, because people ask the question, well, why are they so bound up in this? Why are they so bound up in that? Why these many actions? And I always tell people, I tell them, you realize that the vast majority of Western Zionists are not actually themselves Jewish. They are actually
Mhm.
evangelical Christians, and
They
they are
are.
deeply, deeply, deeply anti-Semitic. If we're going to take anti-Semitism seriously, we need to be talking
Hmm.
about white evangelical Christians, because, and I need to tell people this, I tell them this because I happen to know this.
I love this.
The reason that they are fighting so hard for Israel and for Israel to become a state is because they want the book of Revelations to come to fruition, because their version of Christianity is bound up in reading everything in the Bible completely literally. So to them, the book of Revelations is an itemized list of how the world is going to end. And in that theology, that's why a lot of their politicians are climate accelerationists or deniers, because they
They
think,
want to get it going.
world's ending anyway. What care we for the climate? God's coming tomorrow, so why does it matter? And it's the same with Israel. They want to settle all of the Jewish people in Israel to then facilitate the conditions under which that book will come into fruition. But here's the thing, at the end of the supposed like final battle between Christ and everything else, what's going to happen? What's going to be the ultimate fate of the Jewish people? If they don't accept Christ, they will be destroyed with all the other sinners. Deeply anti-Semitic.
And that's why
Deeply,
they want
deeply,
everyone to
deeply.
already be in Israel.
Exactly.
They're like, just get everybody there soon. Like they're trying to build efficiency, basically.
More
In
or
the
less, yeah.
rapture.
They're trying to speed run the end of the world, more or less, are these evangelicals. They're trying to be like, all right, every Jewish person off you pop into Israel, because they then, for them, that's a facilitating factor for what they want, which is the end of days, for which they hope to have a front row seat to a bunch of Jewish people being destroyed.
It does explain a lot of evangelical stuff, though, actually. If you think of it as they're trying to speed run the end of the world, it all starts to make a bit more sense.
Exactly.
I do love that fact, though. I wanted to share just a couple more notes from the chat. So Charlotte has said, "Make Palestinian food, share it with your friends, make human connections instead of othering refugees." This is a really big one we've seen a lot of since the U.S. election. A lot of people saying, "Get offline, speak to people, speak to people as a human being," but obviously also do it in a way that keeps yourself safe. We have a couple of other. Well, actually, we have one here that I can show it. It's where is this one?
Oh, but I mean, yeah, that's also a thing that you can do. We're not encouraging it directly. We're just saying it's a thing that you can do,
That's
and there's nothing
certainly
wrong with that.
that's a comment. Thank you, Edward. Um, Also, just on, we've got two ends of the cycle, right? We've got people being make food, share, engage, and then we've got other people being like, go there. But that's a huge thing to keep in mind for everybody. Is like, I think what you said there, Tariye, about playing to your strengths is so important. Like, there are people, like some of us, hypothetically, who are very good at yapping. We're good yappers. We're here to yap and like take information and make it into more accessible information. There's other people who are fantastic at coordinating like direct action. There's other people who are fantastic educators, who are fantastic like one-to-one sort of like advocates who work with individual people day in day out. Like there are so many different ways to support, but it's making sure that you're doing one of them at any point. I know over the weekend, Youth Demand were doing like swarms across different cities, which is where they like block a road, and then once the police arrive and stuff, they disperse, and then they go to another road and block that other road, and that's just like a direct action thing that they're constantly doing. Um, but then you have other people doing like events or fundraisers and all of these different aspects. So I think it's collective, right? None of us are going to be able to do anything individually.
On that, one person to really keep an eye out for, if you are a social media geek like me, keep an eye out for Open Bookshelf, because her PhD is in China. And as we know, China's government's quite authoritarian, but the way that they operate in terms of how to smartly protest under a government who's very anti freedom of speech and kind of individuality is incredibly clever. So Open Bookshelf on TikTok, Instagram, the other
Yes.
social media, she gives tips on how that works. She doesn't say go and do it. She just says this is how they do it. And again, you know, like who doesn't want to learn?
I am going to actually drop Open Bookshelf's link in the chat as well, because she is a very, very good creator to follow, and probably someone we should try and get on the show at some point.
I can speak to her if you want.
She is wonderful. So, okay, we are going to jump over into our next topic. So I imagine, well, we've all seen this clip already. It's not the boots ad, I haven't seen that yet, but I wanted to share the clip just for anyone who hasn't. I'm chronically online on TikTok. I wasn't gonna say you guys are chronically online as well. You're actually not as chronically online, but
I'm chronically online.
We are.
I'm on everything. You don't know. You don't know. You don't know the depths I've crawled into on the internet. Okay, the forums I used to be on. I'm a veteran of certain Tumblr wars. You don't know. Okay?
I knew it was going to be Tumblr.
You wouldn't understand. You weren't there.
You don't know what I've seen. All right. Well, in that case, yeah, everyone's chronically online. But for anyone in the chat who's not, I just want to play this video for you now from the New Zealand Parliament. So I'm just going to pull this up.
If 6 votes opposed.
You're playing? You guys hear it? I'm just gonna grab some more water.
The House is suspended until the ringing of the bells. The gallery is to be cleared.
Okay. So this was absolutely massive. I don't know about you. Yeah, I saw it once on my feed, and then I've seen it about 17 times since. It's been like millions and millions of views, people seeing this, and I don't see a huge amount of politics from Australia or New Zealand, actually, in terms of keeping up to speed with a lot of it. And it was really, really powerful, right? I didn't particularly appreciate a lot of the coverage that referred to it as like disrupting Parliament. But it was.
But that's what protests do. They disrupt. A protest with permission is a parade, is what you need to understand. Like, if it's not disrupting anything, then is it really a protest?
Stand up to racism, at it specifically. Again, I bring it up every week. It's flag waving. But yeah, I mean, I thought it was super, super powerful. And actually, when I was on live on Sunday, I had a couple of followers sort of suggest actually looking further into it, because a lot of people like, this is incredibly powerful. There are other people who are saying this is really immature. People calling it childish. Obviously, there was a lot of that kind of respectability politics thing coming in. But I wanted to go into a bit more detail about the bill itself that was being protested, and kind of how it links into a lot of what we're seeing at the moment in the UK, the US, and in Europe as well. Just as like a quick overview, there is a new bill that is being pushed through New Zealand Parliament called the Treaty Principles Bill, which is essentially designed to overhaul this treaty called the Treaty of Waitangi, which was, I think it was in 1840 that it was originally created. It is a document that is designed to grant Maori tribes broad rights to retain their lands, protect their interests, in return for ceding governance to the British Crown. And that treaty, yeah, it's been in place for 184 years. It still guides a lot of the legislation and policy that they see today. The ACT party, which is a smaller, pretty far right party within the country's centre right coalition government, put the bill forward. There's a gent called David Seymour, who, if you have heard him speak, he is insufferable. Not to be personal, but he is insufferable, and he's also pretty diabolical in a lot of ways. Has basically seized on this opportunity, and the way that he is discussing the bill is claiming that what New Zealand is doing at the moment, what they are seeing is they have separate governance based on race. And this is unfair. We shouldn't have people treated differently. Getting rid of this bill, overhauling it, will put the sovereign power of the government into like full fruition. Everybody will be treated equally. I don't see color. That kind of vibe. There was an excellent debate with a gentleman called Helmut Mudlik, which I will drop a note to in the chat as well. In which the kind of pushback against this was like, in the first instance, that treaty was not designed to treat two races differently. The treaty was between the Maori people and the British Crown. It wasn't between Anglo-Saxon people and Polynesian people. And that kind of whole framing of it as being this racial discord was already like you were starting from kind of a false premise. But there's been a lot of pushback from both sides. I think the thing that was really interesting to me was this rhetoric of, oh, so you want equality? Everybody wants to be treated equally? Well, then we shouldn't have a treaty that allows for special protections. And I feel like that's something that we've seen a lot of in the UK and in the US as well.
Yeah. Oh, also, I just wanted to flag up Charlotte Clayton's comment.
Mm-hmm.
The original treaty has different meanings in the English versus the Maori version, which grants different amounts of autonomy depending on which version the government uses the English version.
Yes, and that was actually something that the UN have claimed is not correct. Yes, Charlotte has said the original treaty has different meanings. Yeah. I think it was the UN have actually said that in situations like this, where there is a treaty where the Indigenous people's version of the treaty differs, the Indigenous people's version of the treaty is what should be taking precedence. That is what kind of sits front and center. And it's been, but again, this is now being used in a very weaselly way by David Seymour and his party to go, oh, well, then in that case, like, we're not even using the right version. Like, maybe we should just overturn the whole thing. I think the description that I used earlier was like, it's the equivalent of when someone's like, oh, well, you want feminism, you want equal rights, well, then I should be allowed to hit women, or something like that.
This is the thing, because when people talk about equality, it's always very funny. When people talk about equality, and I think we've all by now seen that graphic of like the difference between equality, equity, and justice, right? And equality is just sort of like giving everyone the exact same thing and just sort of flattening it without any regard for what the differences are, what the nuances may be, and any kind of cultural differences here or there. Whereas equity is a lot more like, okay, but we're going to take all of these things into account and we're going to make things a lot more accessible and a lot more inclusive and a lot more, shall we say, egalitarian in the actual genuine sense of the term.
Mm-hmm.
In a way that doesn't flatten people's culture or disadvantage them legally, for instance. But what do you expect from the far right or anyone on the right for that matter? Like, it's just, I don't know. This is their MO. This is their whole thing.
It's a big problem with like these terms, and as things have changed in society, there was a time where things were so disparate that aiming for equality was genuinely great. Let's fix these massive disparities. That's old hat now. We really do need to be focusing on equity. And when it comes to people that have been forced onto reservations or had no right to a last name, no right to own property, all of these things, that has to be borne into mind when you're talking about the provenance of them moving forward with being able to get to a place where they're equal. Like it's like you mentioned that graphic, and I love it, the one with the boxes and the people stood,
Yeah.
But for me, it's like, oh, let's have a race, and like we'll all start from this line. The problem being, some people are older, shorter, sicker, whatever. That's not fair, is it? But that's equal. They're all starting from the same place. Like equity is, let's take account of the things that make you unique and your unique conditions,
Yeah.
and react that way.
And to also expand on the sport thing, like equity is like the handicap system in golf. It takes
Yeah.
into account like a person's like strength and weaknesses, and then awards them like or awards or deducts like points depending on. I don't know about golf. I just happen to know that it takes those things into account
I know
when
nothing
people
about
are
golf
playing
either. I was
each
like,
I was
other.
like,
yeah,
"Whoa."
When
totally,
people are
completely
playing
agree.
each other,
Just a couple of golfers.
but typically
Like,
speaking, like that's what typically because I would just be like watching whenever like someone's watching like whoever play, and I'm like, what's a handicap? What is that? What is that? And it's like it's a means of evening the score between the opponents playing the game. Of recognizing that these two people are different, they've trained differently, they have these different this height, all this, etc. All these different factors go into giving that person a handicap score, and then from there we decide, okay, that's going to affect your score with this number, that number, and then based on that, play the game.
mhm.
Well, I mean, it's the like I had someone in my comments the other day, like on a video about racism in the US, and obviously there's a lot of kind of fear at the moment. And I was talking about an issue of race essentially, in talking to white people specifically, just to be clear, not me trying to step up front and center. But the someone commented saying like, I just think we should start by forgetting color. Like, first and foremost, let's forget color. We're all humans. And I was like, well, firstly, you could do if everybody agrees at the same time to do it, but if you do it and nobody else does, then you're just being blind to the issues that you're seeing. But also, even if you did that, even if today you went, okay, nobody's going to be like everything's going to be double blind in every context. Nobody's going to be given the space to potentially treat people differently on grounds of race. It's an impossible thing to get to, but if we imagine that that happens, there's still quite a lot of reparations that we kind of need to be considering, because if we just go now like, okay, well, now we're starting over, you've already done hundreds, if not thousands, of years of systemic damage to to the Maori people. Like, it's not like you just get to go, okay, now we're all treated equally. Now that you've been disadvantaged and persecuted and targeted for so long, we're all just going to have a standing start. Everybody's just going to act as though they're in the same position.
I
It is
think
golf
my
related.
my huge problem with like, I know I'm stating the obvious here, but like my huge problem with like let's forget about color or I don't see color is people have different skin colors, and that's fine. You're treating it like a thing you have to ignore, and like cutting out a part of someone's identity to make them palatable. And I'm like, how do you not see that as a really fucking weird thing to say?
And
How do you
also,
not? It's bizarre.
and also, I just, it's like this is the thing about life in the UK or indeed any Occidental nation when you are, melanated. It's like, oh, trust me, I've tried. You won't let me. You won't let
Just forget
me.
about it for a
You won't
second.
let me. You refuse to let me.
Hmm.
Every time, trust me, I would love to.
Hmm.
I would love, and I'd love you too as well. You don't want to, you're allergic, like
Yeah.
to letting me. People always have to. It's just, oh no, but you don't understand. Why don't you just? Why don't you just? I don't know. Why don't you just? We'll start there.
Hmm. It's it's the whole thing of like one of her friends was saying saying to me the other day, like imposter syndrome, where it's like,
Yeah.
oh, you always think that you don't deserve things, and actually you do, and it's like an insecurity issue. And she's saying, like, for Black women, there is no such thing as imposter syndrome, because you're not that's a way of pretending that it's you being insecure. Like, oh, you're just insecure, you should come over it. It's like, no, you're actually being faced with like microaggressions every single day, and outright aggression every single day, and you're also constantly being discriminated against. So it's not like, oh, well, maybe if you were just more self-confident. It's this weird way of like internalizing these things for people, but there's no ability. You can't just switch it off and go, okay, well, no, it's actually fine now. I'm not even thinking about it. It's not front of mind for me anymore. Like, it's an absolutely wild rhetoric, but it does work from these people. Like, this is working now. These statements are working. This kind of people think that he's been really clever, that he's like owned them by going, oh, well, you don't want to talk, well, you don't want racism, well, I think this is racist, and it's actually paying off. So I don't know where I don't know how I'm not going to talk about how we try and combat that rhetoric, because I feel like that's what we've talked about a lot, but like it is evolving in a way that's a little bit, it's scary to see people kind of falling in line with that.
That's the
Yeah,
problem with it, though. They're so hell bent on pushing, like changing that rhetoric to continue to keep it relevant instead of just doing the work.
this is the thing, and they're also relying on a lot of people. They're relying on a lot of people kind of feeling fatigued or a bit browbeaten with just being confronted with how much work there is to do. And the human mind is designed for one thing and one thing, like most efficiently, and that is to seek comfort, to avoid pain, to avoid
Yes.
discomfort. And anything that removes inconvenience, pain, awkwardness, any of it, suddenly people are like, give it to me, inject it, inject it, inject it. And they are relying on that desire in people. They are relying, hang on. Sorry, I had to do the thing. They are relying on people looking at the issue, feeling overwhelmed or exhausted with having to do all of the work, or indeed having to even just start the process of having to do the work, and are going, oh, see, what if I co-opt a certain bit of like progressive language or outdated progressive language, and then I start sort of like twisting it, and they're relying on the fact that these people will have not done the work because they are so overwhelmed to then be like, yeah, it makes kind of sense. Yeah, it makes a sort of sense. And they're relying on like the repetition. If you repeat it enough times, it will become the truth in the minds of enough people. That's what they're relying on.
The reason that the alt-right pipeline is quite seductive for a lot of people is that the alt-right pipeline, you know, to us seems evil, and it is, but like to them, it's this source of like, you're doing it wrong.
You haven't done anything wrong.
They're doing it wrong. They're making you feel bad, and it's like, yeah. So like, I don't know if you've ever heard, but like, you know, like what's the thing? Growing pains. Growing as you get older, sometimes things hurt. Your legs hurt because they're growing fast and blah blah blah. That's life. You don't improve without feeling those things and sitting in that discomfort and going, why do I feel this way? Like, let me unpack that. The alt-right pipeline says, don't. It's not you. It's not you. It's them. Those woke people. And it's like, no.
Exactly. And also, like, regarding this conversation that people have been having over stateside about, oh, how is the left failing? Is the left out of touch? How do they appeal more to these types of guys? And I'm just like, guys, I understand. I see where you're coming from. I know what you mean. I fully understand. That being said, there is no leftist version of patriarchy.
Nope.
There is no leftist version of, yes, by all means, kick your feet up and don't do any work. There's no leftist version of that, because leftist ideology, hell, any kind of progressive ideology starts with a place of discontent and ultimate rejection of what is the status quo. And if you're somebody, and if they're promising you comfort of, shh, it's okay, you don't have to do anything. It's okay. Do nothing. Do nothing. Kick your feet up. It's fine. Come here. I have a warm blanket. You don't need to do anything. Let me wrap you in the blanket and tell you how horrible and mean and everyone is. It's fine. It's fine. Stay here. Stay here. Stay here. Don't think. Don't think. Don't think. There's no leftist equivalent of that, because leftism or progressivism, by its very nature, demands that you do the work, demands that you show up, demands that you do the reading, or if not do the reading, attend the lecture of somebody who has done the reading and then imbibe the information that way, and then from there, begin the work and join others in the work and join others in dismantling it in your own life and identifying first with yourself. Wow, how have I been upholding this? How am I a passive agent of this? How have I been pushing this at other people in my life? And maybe then I start with myself, and then it ripples out, and then I bring others with me, etc., etc., etc. So yeah, there's no leftist version of, yeah, those damn bitches. There's not. I'm sorry. There's no leftist version of, oh, those pesky queers with their right. There's no leftist version of that. I'm sorry, guys. There's no, extrapolate to any bigotry, anything. There's no leftist version of classism. There's no leftist version of transphobia. There's no leftist version of queerphobia, racism, none of it. I'm sorry. By dint of choosing this life, you are saying, I am going to actively commit myself to put these things away, and not just put them away in myself, but actively dismantle them wherever I see them, at work, in my relationships, in society, if it can get that far, or as far as I can humanly take it. You are choosing that. You are choosing the harder life. You're choosing the harder life. It's the difference between getting up and going to the gym and deciding to do the deadlifts and sitting in bed all day long with the bed rod. And it's like, listen. You don't get stronger if you don't go to the gym and do the deadlifts. Go and do the deadlifts. This is what it is.
Yeah.
You've chosen the life of deadlifts. You must now commit. You must now commit.
I felt motivated a second ago, but the
That was
deadlift
so
thing
good.
came in. That was so good.
I'm sorry.
That's
Yo,
an
don't
individual
apologize,
thing.
Heather.
That's my
You
own
live in
life
it.
because I had to I was like, Tariye, you keep complaining about your lack of fitness, and yet here you are at home, not in the gym, not exercising. Go to the gym, deadlift something.
Right.
I go to the gym all the time.
I
I
did.
put all of my time into mentally unpacking, and that's the heavy lift that I've been doing
There you go.
emotionally. The brain
But
is a
can I-
very large muscle.
The shadow
Can I
work
just-
is important. Shadow work is its own mental gym. You got to do it. You got to do it.
Can I just say though, that was exquisite.
Mhm.
Every minute of that was so good.
That's so yeah. There was someone. I was at the Gaza Nights event in Manchester in August, which was like a fundraiser with Amplify Gaza Stories, and they had one of the performers. She was an Irish lady, and she was very, very passionate about the Palestinian cause because her father was in the IRA and was imprisoned during the hunger strikes, and she described it as like she was like, "Good on you for like turning into the fire." And she referred to it as that, and I think that's the first time it's been described to me in a way that actually felt empowering, or in a way I don't know if it clicked for me just because the fact that we were in this massive venue, there were all these people like-minded. It really felt like a sort of beautiful thing, but it was one of the first times that I was like, that's actually a really cool feeling. Like, it's a good feeling to have. It's like when you've been a people pleaser your whole life and you start saying no to people, and it's harder than just like short term, it's more uncomfortable. It makes you feel a bit nervous. Like, you have to kind of have more difficult conversations, but it gets really liberating over time. And that feeling of like, it was the Nova Reid article that I always reference, No More White Saviors, where she was like, it's like sitting with discomfort.
Yeah.
And it's those kinds of phrases of like, that's the feeling of improving. That's the feeling of doing something with people and like actually, yeah, it's growth as well. Like and it's
Exactly.
actually helping other people as well, as
And the
opposed to
thing
just.
is, it's like a muscle, exercising it. The first time you do it, you're going to feel like shit. The DOMS is going to kick your ass. You're going to want to put it down. You're going to cry, scream, curse God. You
Screaming,
will.
crying, throwing up.
Screaming, crying, throwing up, cursing God, cursing your past self for choosing you to lead you down this path, cursing your mother for bearing you. You will curse everything. But then there will come a point where it starts to feel easier. It hasn't gotten easier. You've gotten stronger.
Yeah.
But you don't get stronger if you don't commit to doing the work.
Yeah.
It
And
will
See-
get
hiding.
easier.
See,
Or
here's
rather,
the
you
thing.
will get stronger.
Mm-hmm.
The funny thing is, because you just mentioned it then when you were talking, and I want to pull out an example that Sneakret said to me the other day in a voice note where she was talking about like
The voice notes.
the secret voice notes. She
I
was talking
leave.
about like co-opting language and using it in the wrong way. And she said, you know, those people that learn a certain amount of like therapy talk, and that, like you said earlier about like gaslighting and stuff, and people will be like, oh, this is toxic and you're gaslighting me, and they don't know what it means, but they're just throwing it out there to try and derail. And that whole, what you just said there is so true. There's so many people who are like, oh, I'm doing the work, and they mean that they're like open the book and stare at the pages, and then they'll be like, I read a book about anti-racism, completed it, mate. And it's like, did you apply that to yourself and understand the damage you've done and will continue to do if you don't unlearn? And they don't, you know? And it's like well-intentioned in terms of like, I do want to do it, but I don't actually want to change anything. And I talk about it a lot in terms of like, you might feel some real discomfort, but you have to learn to be like, right, I can ignore this and it will continue to persist, or I can go, why do I feel this way? What's happening inside of me right now that's making me feel this? And the funny thing is, when you do it and you explore and you break these ideas down, you're like, it's come from a really weird place, and then you can deal with it. Then you can become a better person. Until you do that, until you sit there with those feelings and until you understand them, you are saying you're going to do something and not actually doing anything to improve yourself, other than going, oh my God, look how many books I've got, guys. And it's like, cool.
Yeah. Yes, and I will be furiously atting book talk, or at least the part of them that keep insisting that reading's not political.
It's not political to read a book.
Oh
Like,
my God,
okay,
guys.
oh
Like,
my God.
I am so disappointed in the book talk community. Like, we read to escape from society and from politics. And I'm just like,
What are
Anyway,
they reading?
realize
here's-
that
What are
by
they
the act of
specifically reading? Like Mr. Tickle? I don't know what they're reading.
the gag is they're reading fiction. They're reading The Hunger Games, talking about how they see themselves in Katniss Everdeen. But
Why can't life just be like Game of Thrones? Or, like I said, Harry Potter making everybody a fucking liberal. Harry Potter made a generation of liberals. I'm so sick of the propaganda of the last book of Harry Potter.
My favorite is
become a cop? Why?
It was so, now I'm just one of the police. How? But I'm a good guy, so it's okay.
my favorite is video games as well. Like, I literally thought I was having a stroke the other day because I saw a streamer being like, I just miss when games weren't woke, you know? Like, I miss playing games like Metal Gear Solid. And I was like, Metal Gear Solid, a game series about a like disenfranchised secret agent who sneaks into a nuclear facility to try and stop terrorists from launching a nuclear weapon. You want to play that non-political game?
I just want to have a nice, calm game of Metal Gear Solid. Why can't we just watch something chill like The Matrix? It's
No, my favorite. Oh my God, guys, Star Wars is so political now.
Star Wars. Oh, it's become too political.
Can you believe that
The
Rishi
Empire.
Sunak is a fan of Star Wars? Like, what side does he vote for?
I'm sorry, I'm not bringing it up. Well, no, I am bringing it up. I was going to say I'm not bringing it up. This is why Star Trek's better. I've said it again. And also, to be fair, though, Star Trek is a lot of space colonialism. It does do that. But the fans are more aware of it and a bit guilty about it, as opposed to the Star Wars fans who will just intrepidly go with absolute nonsense every time anything happens. I want to show, actually, so we've got a gent in the chat. He's called Gary. Gary has joined us for a couple of shows recently.
Yeah, it's Gary from
hi,
Let's Stream the other
Gary.
day. Yeah, hi, Gary. Not got anything to do with a Sunday evening, do we?
I'm going to be honest, Gary's been a little bit hostile previously, and I don't normally like to bring these chats up because I don't want to give them attention because we're about our own community. We want to talk about our own community, but I think it fits into the discussion that we're having here. If you ignore the slightly passive-aggressive tone, Gary has said, it's refreshing that Novara actually asked the question, are the left out of touch? Right? Bear with me. I want to frame it.
Okay.
When the discussion I assume Gary is having is, have we lost touch with normal, hardworking, normal working people? Right? The normal working class, normal, hard, everyday Joe kind of people who everyone just likes a pint and are going for a beer, or whatever kind of stereotype we have of like these mythical people. I do think that the left feels more radical than it used to, and feels in the sense that it feels far further than the norm of what we see in the mainstream media and what we're seeing from the overall sort of system at the minute. I don't want to say that we've never been a progressive country. Our whole system is built on imperialism, but I do think that the left, as it's defined, however, if this is what we are, if we're doing it now, I think we are further removed from the median at the moment, because I think the median is drifting further and further right each day and more openly. Maybe it's that. Maybe it feels like the right is being more openly right-wing than it used to be, as opposed to when it used to at least hide it a little bit. But I do think there's a bigger disconnect. But I think that ties into what you were saying of like, it's this waking up feeling, and you do feel it becomes more and more a part of your life to the point that it's a lot harder to ignore. It's really hard to ignore politics now.
Yeah.
Very that. I think my issue whenever anyone does this, like, is the left out of touch with the working class thing, is what exactly do you think I am? I was brought up in a little village in the middle of England, in the north of England, right? Like, not a form of mining town, no, not like that. But my dad used to fit double glazed windows. My mum was a carer. We were poor. Mum had to take a year off work because of cancer. I went to uni. I got the maximum bursary. I was the first person in my entire family to go to university. I was working class. I am working class. I'm still in touch with my roots. If I care about it, then I assume the rest of the working class does, because I've not lost that connection to the working class. If you think that people sitting on a live stream and talking about this stuff are out of touch with the working class, I think you're out of touch with the working class, because we are.
Thank this is the thing. Okay, now see, you guys are working class. I know for a fact I'm not, because I was, oh darling, I went to the Cheltenham Ladies College, don't you know? I'm actually a class traitor. I am actually a class traitor is what I am. So let's
Just
be
like to
correct
clarify,
on
I am fully
terms.
not working class. Both my parents were teachers. I don't want to I don't want to be seen as appropriating anything in here.
This is the thing, right?
Tertiary jobs for parents. I'm just going to say
Exactly.
that.
But here's the thing. You are right about it being fundamentally like it's this rubbish notion that people have of like this mythological, like mythologized version of what they perceive the working class to be. I remember, what was it, in the aftermath of the 2019 general election, when Jeremy Corbyn like lost, and his brother Piers then decided to go on a tirade
Oh
about
yeah.
how, oh, you elites in London with your coffee shops. And I'm just there like, sir, please. The majority of who's keeping London going is the working class. And you're holding on to this antiquated notion of, this northern blokes in their flat caps going down the mines. When it's like, this is a majority service-based economy. The majority of the working class now are the people at the pub pulling the pint, are the people waiting tables, are the people who are like doing custodial and janitorial work, are cleaning ladies, are bus drivers, taxi drivers. Like, that's who the majority of the working class is. It's people plying services who are like, that's who the majority of the working class is. This notion of they're in the factories, it's like, yeah, that's true. But then also at the same time, when people always try and set up being working class in like stark opposition to people being queer or trans or
Yeah.
anything else, it's like, you do realize the majority of these people are themselves actually working class, right?
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
don't have to worry about just class oppression. They have to worry about all of this other shit plus class oppression. All of this other shit is made harder by the fact that they are working class.
What do we think immigrants are? The
Well,
huge,
exactly.
massive majority of people who immigrated ahead of Brexit happening were
Exactly.
in working class. But it's like, there's a really interesting history of Punjabi communities in North Sheffield when there was first like a large group of people immigrating, and like the similarities in like northern working class solidarity. There was like a racial divide at first, and then it was very quickly changed. And there's like this huge record of like the similarities between people who had immigrated and were working in those communities and the white communities that had already lived there was like completely like there weren't similarities. They were living the exact same lives. They had the same attitudes. They had the same routine every day. They had the same sort of structures. And then you had like these poshos in the countryside. Like it was that there was the solidarity that was there was not based along like where you were born. It was based on the actual things that made your life similar. It's ridiculous. And that sort of stuff is just completely forgotten, because it's like, no, we only mean the imaginary working class man that I've made up. Jim
Well, I
Speaks said
think
the Al Murray on the street.
the biggest thing
The
that
gag
really
is Al Murray himself is also not working class, and that
Mhm.
pub landlord is a caricature.
the
He's
biggest
not-
that's the thing that bothers me though as well, is it's the people that play that role that always get listened to. Who's more, right? Genuinely, chat, who is more working class? Me or any of us in here right now, or Nigel Farage, who I keep getting told really cares about working class people's issues. I'm like, Nigel Farage cares about selling NFTs and racism. That's what Nigel Farage cares about. And he will tell you that he cares about the issues that you care about and make you feel heard, because he's grifting off of you. Like, I want nothing from you. I just want to be like, hey, so things are really shit, and wouldn't it be nice if they weren't as bad for us all? You know,
This is the thing. And do you know what? Do you know something? Regarding all of this, I will say one thing of the right wing, of people like your Farage and everything else. They are very, very, very good at getting to people through their genuine dissatisfaction with the system. They are very good at communicating that and saying, hey, you know how you're working so hard, and try as you might, you still are finding it harder and harder to make ends meet. And, for all of your work, the bills are still due, for all of your work, etc., etc., etc. Now, see, they start from a very real position of, hey, you're suffering under capitalism. You're suffering under this rat race. You're being crushed under these people's boot heel. But then from there, they then point at somebody who's also under the boot heel and say, yeah, it's that filthy immigrant over there.
They're the ones with the boot.
Yeah, saying that it's like, no, sir. they're actually here under the boot heel with me. It's the people at the top who are oppressing all of us. Don't you
Why would you
understand?
believe the guy with the boot? You're like, oh,
That's the
he's
thing.
what was that? Oh yeah, I totally agree. No, you're
It's
right. It is
because
those
he's
guys.
very good. He's a very good and effective communicator at first seeing and identifying that I see you. I see your suffering. I know how I see how hard it is for you, and are very good at, because first and foremost, a lot of people just want acknowledgement of pain. Now, this is where I am going to sound a little bit like, this is where I might maybe give Gary a bit of the benefit of the doubt in this whole is the left out of touch thing,
immediately.
right?
I'm joking.
Just a little bit. It's that it's that I noticed it when it was the election and it was between Jovan Owusu-Nepal and Nigel Farage in Clacton, right? Those two contesting the seat. And then basically, the only thing that's really good at getting rid of right-wing populism is left-wing populism. It is somebody who first sees people and say, hey, I see you. I see that you're struggling. I see your problems. I see all of the ways in which you are being dealt a really terrible hand by this entire system.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is these people here at the top. It's
Yes.
not your neighbors who are down here at the bottom with you. It's not these people here who are also struggling with you. They've got their own shit to deal with, and ultimately all of you are under this person's boot heel.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So the most effective way to combat right-wing populism is left-wing populism. And I guess where we can sometimes get in the weeds a little bit on the left is that I don't think the left is as capable of communicating how connected a lot of these struggles are. Because a lot of people, when on the outside looking in at when the left are having these discussions and trying to speak to people about these very real issues, we understand that they're connected. We understand that classism, racism, xenophobia, transphobia, ableism, all of it is bound up together. It's a many tentacled beast. We understand that it's all one beast, and these are all tentacles of the same eldritch horror, right? But other people, they are primarily concerned with, all I can see is just this one tentacle and it's flattening me.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're a bit like, they want somebody to be like, get this fucking thing off of me. Please get it off me. Please help me, get it off me. And then when you help get this thing off me, then I can stand up, see the whole picture, see, oh my God, it's over there. It's over there. It's actually much bigger than I thought. This is an all of us problem.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. This is the one bit of ground I will cede and say, do you know something? We need to be better at communicating how connected these things are. Right now, I don't think it's landing for people.
Yeah.
And that's the only bit of ground I'm going to give. That's it. They can have that 1 inch.
Well,
I think
you go first, my dear.
I'll be quick. I'll try and go quick. Oh God, I've forgotten everything. No, I'll remember. I think the one of the challenges that we do have, that in order to give us a little bit of grace, is in terms of the message has to be equally easy, right? So you can say it's the billionaires, and people will go, yeah, it's the billionaires and the refugees, and you'll be like, what? And it's because we do also have a media that is heavily pushing these far right messages all the time. We have systems that are constantly pushing these far right messages. We also, though, I think there is an element, like, I don't know if you feel this way. When I watch like people like Nigel Farage, at least he tells it like it is, and I'm like, Nigel Farage is taking the piss out of you. Like, he's cosplaying you. He's doing it as a joke. When you say cosplaying, people don't find it relatable, right? Or make Star Trek references. Maybe that's where I'm going wrong. But it is like this. It's like he's mocking you by doing an impression of you. And I think not being willing to do that kind of game, or like Dominic, what's his name? Dominic Cummings? Yeah, Dominic Cummings, the weird guy. Like people who are like snakes in the grass, who are more than willing to compromise and talk down to people, patronize people, openly lie to people. They're better at doing, it's a brand. It's better at marketing. And if your ethics are fundamentally tied into not wanting to mock or imitate or take the piss out of people by doing that kind of thing, that also makes it harder. The last thing I was going to say makes it harder is the fucking liberals, who make it so, but who go around saying that they're left, saying that they're progressive, doing all the same things that the right wing people do, but less effectively, talking about identity politics without talking about the actual problem, because they can't blame the problem because it's the same problem that funds them as funds the far right. And that just means that people constantly lose faith because they think, oh, that's what being progressive is. That's the only face that is allowed to appear on mainstream media. It's the only face that's put forward as being, this is progressive. And people see that and they go, well, that's actually for shit. That's just like a way less effective version of Nigel Farage, and he doesn't even seem very fun. And it's like, well, of course it's going to make the left look bad, because it's not. I think people think that being deplatformed is like Dave Chappelle and his Netflix series or whatever the hell. Like, they think that's what it is to be like cancelled and have people go up against you. The left is not visible in media, because deplatforming is actually not having you appear, not this kind of weird middle.
You're
This kind of,
invisible.
Yeah.
yeah,
And it's also, it's
You're
not just,
invisible. You're not in the Daily Mail.
yeah, literally.
and also regarding what you were saying about like the liberals and everything else, it's also that what people oftentimes think of and see when you mention the left, what they're seeing is things like liberal co-optation of leftist language.
Yes.
What they're seeing is things like rainbow capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
What they're seeing is things like what they're seeing is this very deliberate, like, progressive washing of like a lot of liberal stuff. What they're seeing is like, so for instance, when Kemi Badenoch became Tory leader, a bunch of people being like, oh, well, it's great because representation. And I'm like, no, you need to understand something. When people talk about representation, they don't mean, hey, put a black person as the head of the white supremacist machine. That's not what we're talking about. That's not what we want. Like, we need representation that's actually meaningful. That's
We didn't
actually
care
trying
that you renamed the sweets in M&S to
like,
make
we don't
people, like,
care that
that
you put a
wasn't what we
rain.
were fighting for.
Like, we don't care that you put a fucking rainbow on the damn BLT down M&S. We don't care about that. Like,
The vegan sausage roll, that wasn't what the end result was. We weren't like, we've done it.
Right? This is the thing. Like, but so often when you just say the left to like regular people who are not as chronically online as we are, who are not as like in it as we are, and you just ask them what image will come to their mind when you say the left. These are the images. This is what it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're also having to fight like that double whammy of like no, guys, no, please come back. That's not the actual thing. It's like
You're having
imagine
to undo
somebody.
that and then also combat all the other
Exactly.
stuff.
It's like imagine if somebody has only ever heard shitty covers of Queen music. Imagine if all they know of Queen is shitty cover bands.
And all the
Off
lyrics are
key,
racist.
out of tune, like offbeat, no charisma. That's all they know. That's all they know of Queen. You mention Queen, they're like, get it the fuck away from me. Until you and then you have to be like, no, guys, I swear it's actually great. Please listen to the proper thing with me. Let me play it for you. Like, so we're having to do all of that.
And you're having to take their headphones off at the same time, and they're like, no, I'm good. Sorry, Davey, what was your addition going to be? And then I want to go through a few comments.
Well, I just find it quite interesting because a lot of the chat was saying you shouldn't be defined by your class, and that's it's divisive and blah blah blah. There's a lot of really interesting chat, and I don't want to dismiss anybody's thoughts and feelings about that. But the issue I take with people saying like class shouldn't define you, or this shouldn't define you, or that shouldn't define you is sometimes it's not about how you feel about what defines you. It's about how the people that control the narrative want to write about you. So you might feel that that doesn't apply to you and it shouldn't define you, but they're the ones that create the box and then cram you into it. So it's a push and a shove because I hear a lot of people talking about liberal identity politics, and I do agree that they exist and it's problematic and they need to be talked about with nuance. But if I don't bring up that I'm gay in a conversation and then someone uses a homophobic slur, that's identity politics interferes in a way that I didn't want it to. I don't want those things. I got hate crime in a freaking taxi last Monday because I was defending trans people. I didn't want that conversation to come up. I didn't want the violence of being confronted by an angry man about what he thinks about trans people. Those things come to me. They come to my doorstep, and then I have to decide how to deal with them. And that's not a choice I've made. So as much as the only thing I wanted to say was, as much as I understand I rise above being identified as blah, 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 that's not how the machine that we are in works. So be conscious of the fact that just because you don't feel that way about yourself, it doesn't mean that you're not having that put upon you by other people that control how the narrative goes. And just understand that that impacts on both how you see and are seen. And it's just something to bear in mind.
It's that is a very, very good point. I think and it links into what you were saying earlier, Tariye, with the idea of like I remember when I was a kid, first time realizing that I wasn't like the Geordie man that my dad was. Like I went into a corner shop and I was like, well, my dad always has a chat with people, and I had a chat and this guy was really weird to me, and I was like, oh, I'm a teenage woman, teenage girl, not teenage woman. But it's that kind of realization of like, oh, people do treat you differently, and it's very easy to be like, oh, my class isn't. I'm not even from the north, and when I went to London, I did an internship. Someone called my accent provincial on my first day, and I was like, never thought about that before, but now we're aware of it. Fantastic. First venture down south. I'm sure this won't affect my confidence in my career.
Yeah, like this is the thing. It's like you say. It's like you were saying, Davey. Like so much. It's like it would be nice to be able to put it down, but at your earliest convenience, you use it as a club with which to crack me over the head the minute I don't behave in a way you like. Like, and sometimes you'll just be minding your own fucking business. Like I remember when it happened. I was what, 7 or 8, going to like this summer camp thing outside of London. Hang on.
Whoa. The camera
Hang
is
on.
racist.
Here I am.
Back.
Here I am. Right. And going to like this summer camp thing on the way back, and literally like one of the other little girls, she was about a year younger than me, was literally like, oh, your skin's dirty, like your mom doesn't wash you. Like clearly like you fell in mud and your mom never washed you, and that's why your skin is the way it is. I was like 7 or 8. So when people want to be like, oh, forget about color, it's like, you've been reminding me since I was a child, since I was knee high to a grasshopper. You've not let me forget. So, I mean, I'll forget, but you first, babe.
Yeah. Just change your mindset. What do you mean trauma? It is. Yeah, I mean, I think we've probably drifted away from the topic a little bit, but I think it's been a really interesting discussion.
Us? Never.
I know, it's not like the Star Trek.
A tangent, you say? Never.
Just drifted away. I wanted to just very quickly say that actually, I'm just going to really quickly do a Star Trek break. This is really interesting discussion about intersectionality. I don't mean to censor whatever I want to talk about. We could do, it was just because there was a lot of comments. Just wanted to quickly go through. We had one from Becca that said Star Trek's much better. I said that's great. Charlotte Clayton said, look at the origin of the Vulcan salute, which I believe is a Jewish symbol for peace, which where Live Long and Prosper came from. Need to rewatch Expanse and more Star Trek. Absolutely you do, Rez. Katie Marshall said Star Wars is political. Rebel Alliance is an allegory. Thank you for the VC. Apparently,
the Viet Cong. Yeah, George Lucas said in an interview, it's like, no, this here is text. Based it on the Viet Cong, mate. What are you talking about? Like
woke George Lucas. My manager tried to cancel me when I said Star Trek was better. Haha. Not really. Everyone in the office thought we were both lame. We all lost. In that scenario.
No, let me tell you something. You want to be really lame. Nah, it's not Star Wars v Star Trek. It's Stargate versus Battlestar Galactica. That's the real niche, like lame shit.
Nerds. I think those guys are nerds. I'm going to say that now. I see that and I'm like, something's so online. Katie Marshall said, as long as you agree with me that Picard or Janeway are the best, I do. Katie, thank you very much. Anyway, quickly, thank you so much, Oz, for becoming a member. And guys, I do just want to do a little quick plug. Please do, if you are able to, if you are happy to, please do join as a member on the channel here. You can also support us on Patreon. I believe it's like £3 a month or £5 a month over at turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. If you are not able to support us in any way financially, that is absolutely fine. But if you're able to share our videos, if you want to do clips from our shows, if you want to share, comment, engage, something that is super helpful is if when we finish the stream, you are able to leave the tab open for just a few seconds and then potentially come back, refresh, leave us a little comment, leave us a little like, just to say something. It's really, really appreciated. It really helps us kind of climb up the algorithm a little bit, because even though we're trying to be independent media, we are still operating within a platform that is owned by big tech, and they are not our biggest fans. So if you'd like to support us, we'd appreciate that. Thank you again, Oz Striker. Welcome to the group. Final note in the comments from Legala. This was from the other week where I didn't realize that my audio was still visible on, like, you could still hear my audio on stream. We were watching a clip of some liberals and I've been clipped just audio wise going, I fucking hate liberals in the background of the video. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, right. Are we ready for the big talk? I mean, we've talked Palestine, we've talked Indigenous rights, we've talked intersectionality.
This is the real
All of
pressing
that.
issue of our time, don't you know?
Pales in comparison, I believe, from what I've heard, is the Boots Christmas ad. I genuinely haven't seen any of the Christmas ads this year because I don't have a TV license or watch any TV. So this is like brand new for me. I think have you both seen it?
Yeah.
Seen the fallout?
Yeah, so like I first saw it when I was just watching regular terrestrial TV and then forgot about it because I was like, oh, it's the Christmas ads, whatever. And then about a week later, the shit started. Like,
it seems like it's all kicked off this year. I
Yeah.
think there was something else with the Coca-Cola ad was done with AI, which meant it
oh
was even more.
no.
I don't know. Holidays are coming. It still happened, but apparently not as well. This is just going to be a blind viewing for me of the Boots Christmas ad. Let's see
Let's do it.
if it's game changing for us.
I'm so excited
Hang
for
on.
you.
Okay, strapped in. Let's see what we've got.
Roll the clip.
They wanna know. Sugar Plum.
Is it playing?
Come in.
Yeah. Okay.
Shall we? How do I look? Slaying. Maya. Fabulous. Billy. She'll love that. Robin. Oh, that's very them. Next. Marvelous. Incoming. Good. This one's mine. We're out of bows. We are never out of bows. Last one.
You thought it was all him?
I mean, I'm okay. I don't know what I was expecting.
Okay, so based off of like what you had heard of the backlash, what were you expecting?
What? I think I over-egged it when I said that maybe Hamas was mentioned. I think maybe I was expecting too much in terms of the controversy. Although Davey's left, it's too woke.
One sight of Mrs. Claus out the door.
telling that the white man's left. No, he has actually just had to nip to the loo, but he will be back in a moment. Yeah, I mean, it seemed like the kind of usual thing. Like it was the kind of jokey, oh, the ladies do all the work.
Yeah.
That kind of feels like that was pretty much it. It was like, oh, we got you gals. Like, you remember the advert that was like, here come the girls? And it had like, ladies walking down
that
the
was
street.
also Boots as well.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, isn't that their brand? That's their thing. That they're like, oh, lady, because all of their audience are like, all of their customers are women.
Yeah, overwhelmingly. Like I remember there was one one summertime ad they did for like hay fever stuff where it's like I think they're attending like some wedding or something, and then it looks like someone's crying, and they're like, "Oh, Pat, are you all right?" She's like, "It's the allergies. We're outside," and then everyone's got like stuff that they've got from Boots, and then a man comes up to them like, "Guys, help!" Like, and it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
It just. I don't want to say that it feels like a distraction from other stories.
I just feel like there might be slightly more important things about like Santa Claus. Like the funniest thing I saw was someone saying, were these men under the impression that Santa Claus actually exists and that it's not the women in their lives going out and doing all of the stuff that makes Christmas magical? And I was like, that genuinely might be the issue.
That might actually be it. That might actually genuinely be it. They thought it was Santa.
They're like, I did see. I was saying there was a really funny TikTok of someone who was like, I mean, I get why you guys are really upset because from what I remember, according to the Bible, Santa is actually white. And it was like, yeah, it's Santa. We know, right? Have we said? Do we know?
I guess, but it's also because they were like drag queens and stuff playing the elves.
Oh
I just,
no, yeah, I
just
guess.
I just feel like it's so funny to be told that we're out of touch and we're unserious, and then people are like, "That's a man in a dress talking to Mrs. Claus. Well, I better boycott that store." Then it's like, I'm out of touch. Like, that's your biggest problem right now. Like, I'm going, my God, like, how, you know, have I saved up enough money to be able to buy things for all of my family? And everyone else is like, oh my God, people of color and drag queens. Ah! I'm like, if this
Terrible.
is your biggest concern, my God, I'm jealous.
There were some very
I
funny
haven't
comments
run
about your
to
disappearance.
I haven't run to
shock.
Boots. I haven't run to Boots. I've run to Boots, the house down, sis. Thanks. So works leg.
And this woke filth. No, don't mention drag. Don't mention
Well,
gay.
the
on this
funniest thing about having wireless headphones is that whilst I was in there, I could hear you guys talking about the fact that I wasn't
shit.
here,
You
and
know,
I was like,
oh no, that's really embarrassing.
Like, I can hear you.
I always jump at the chance to talk shit, and it always comes back to bite me.
I mean, you know something, they keep saying that, like, you know, Britain's like not a manufacturing economy anymore. Well, I mean, what are you talking about? We manufacture outrage so well.
Yeah, we're so good at it.
we're the number one
exports.
exporters. Do you remember when it was just like being angry about queues, and now we're like, human beings.
We brought it straight back. This is good stat in from Michael. 89%, something like 89% of Boots Advantage card holders are female.
This is true. I am one of them.
I have one. I've lost it.
I have one, but because my handwriting's so bad, it says David Luther, and I'm like, I'm not Lex's brother, you freak.
David Luther. I love that.
People are losing their minds over an ad. But the thing is, I told you guys earlier, like before we got on here, like it's a yearly tradition at this point. You know, the Coke Christmas ad, the holidays are coming, holidays are coming. People wait for the John Lewis Christmas ad, and then a big retailer will release an ad, and sure enough, there will be outrage about one of the Christmas ads. It's like it happened, what was it? Like a couple years ago, it was the John Lewis one. Was that the one where they had like the alien child playing with the other child?
There was like a Tesco one where they had like different families celebrating things, different seasons, and it was like, oh, a reason to celebrate for everyone. And people were like, ban this woke film.
And,
oh my God.
All of the white people were like, oh, we don't exist anymore. I was like, oh, one advert doesn't feature me. I'm so offended. I was like, yeah, you guys are definitely the rules.
Oh my gosh. I remember it was like this Sainsbury's one, which was like, it was like this Black family, but they were like showing a lot of other families. It was like a dad on the phone to his like grown-up daughter, and he's like, oh, you know, we're having Christmas dinner around mine. He's like, I'll bring the gravy and I'll sing the song. She's like, Dad, not the gravy song. And then he's singing his gravy song, and then meltdown, blood in the streets. Blood in the streets. And so bad was it that the other supermarkets were like, nah, you lot have gone too far. Sainsbury's can have our spot where we were going to debut our Christmas ad during Britain's Got Talent, no less. Max amount of eyes on terrestrial TV, just because you lot will not quit with this shit.
It's yeah. No, I mean, I want to show a couple of the comments just because I think some of them deserve a little bit of love.
Yeah.
From people. So, I mean, someone has, Jacqueline's come straight out at the very beginning and said corporations virtue signal and sell products, which is what we'll get into in just a second, because as much as it's hilarious that these people are getting upset in the first place, there is also other things to keep in mind. We have Jacqueline saying, aren't drag queens traditional at Christmas?
Yeah.
I thought she was traditional. Becca said, Davey's not allowed in Boots. He's not the demographic. You're not the target demographic. You should not be allowed coming into Boots anyway. There was a fantastic comment that I need to find because it didn't save it, which is someone said Santa was white in the Bible. That was the problem. The problem was that Santa was actually white in the Bible. And someone else flagged that Walgreens owns Boots.
Yeah, they do.
Shit.
which
Yeah.
I wanted to pull in. There we go. Fake news, Santa's real. Yeah, this was the comment from Martin. Martin said, "Everyone knows Santa is white because he's Jesus' son."
Joe, that's my favorite thing about having grown my hair long. Is so many times I get to walk into a room and be like, "Hi, it's me, the guy that looks like every Western depiction of Jesus."
I'm white Jesus, and I'm here to help. Santa's white because he's Jesus' son. I think the best response within here is, Edward said here, Tariye, sorry, clambering
Yeah,
up.
it's fine.
Don't discuss ads. Don't give the capitalist pigs that promote them the attention. They just do it to sell shit and get publicity. Don't play the game. I will say, if you have seen from the title of this live, wokeism versus or capitalism, as much as we want to have fun, have a laugh, we do also want to obviously talk about the other aspect of this. It's something I've talked about a bit before, is that when we talk about like, oh, it's woke, they've done woke, like all of these businesses are businesses that are
Yeah.
selling to demographics to make money in order to continue to do whatever kind of crazy capitalist shit they want to do.
Like, no doubt in the end, one of the things, because I've talked about this a little bit myself, one of the things that I'm really concerned to see is how the election of Donald Trump is going to interfere with all of these, like, you know, like with the sort of gesture politic of like, look, here's people of color in this advert, and look, a trans flag, and that's probably all going to go in America in particular. Possibly it will be reflected over here because his election has shown that there isn't that much of an appetite. But what might also happen is that it might consolidate a smaller core audience of like loyalty by doing that. But all that is it's just a deeper form of rainbow capitalism or like representative capitalism, because you're going, I'm still appealing to you, and so you just consolidate a smaller, more loyal base. It's just doing capitalism, but doing it to a more specific and target audience.
This is the thing, right? Like it's like I keep trying to tell people, whenever they get this is like what we were talking about again when I told you, like in the mind of the average person who isn't as in the shit as we are, you mention the left, and part of the image that will be conjured in their mind is things like the brand executive who okayed this ad, or who came up with the ad, or who decided to push this ad. It's the people
That's what they
who then
think is what we
decide
care about.
that is what they think is the left, of people who are not as in the shit as we are, right? And the thing is, regarding the point about, well, this is just capitalism, because I remember speaking to somebody who is very like not online, just sees a lot of this stuff passively, just, you know, gets the odd like forward from like WhatsApp groups or whatever, and they were like, oh, these companies always like really like pandering to like LGBTQ people, like they're really going in this kind of direction. And I'm like, no, they're not. No, they're not. This is for money, first and foremost. Don't get it twisted. Like, they are following the money. It just so happens that following the money in this particular insular case, or increasing clutch of insular cases, might mean having to make concessions to a certain group of people. It might mean representing a certain group of people. But ultimately, they're doing what corporations do, which is maximize profit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's like, because we had a really interesting conversation about it today where I said, you know, like, do they really think that there's like a cadre of gay people like going around to Netflix and being like, we want you to put a gay person in this series? Like, it's some like hackneyed, it's this hackneyed, you know, like disconnected writer who's like, I know more people will watch if I put more people in it. Like, I don't give a shit about seeing a gay case or like a gay person or whatever, unless it's an interesting and well thought out storyline, and it rarely is. You know, representation is important, but only if it's actually useful. It's like rewatching, you know, if you're a gay person rewatching Will and Grace now, at the time it was transgressive. There were gay people on TV talking about being gay. And now I watch it back and it's like, hello, I don't touch other men. I don't even talk about it. I just reference that I'm gay. And then there's a parable about how to be a decent person. And I'm like, you know, like I didn't ask or want for this. You guys are getting mad about it. I'm frustrated with it because it doesn't represent people accurately. Who's this pleasing? We're all mad about the same thing.
There's a huge part of this where, especially when you talk about like the the music industry and the sporting world in the way that there is on-screen representation, and it's often pushed forward as in like I think like, you know, the BBC will always have like on-screen representation when they're doing like TV shows, but everybody in the TV show talks with the exact same voice and has the exact same family background, and every single character is upper middle class unless they're from a council estate, in which case they have like a cartoon Victorian boy accent, like, "What I don't know about you, miss," and all the actors are upper middle class, and then all of the people behind the scenes are upper middle class white people or upper class white people who went to Oxbridge and Cambridge, and there it's like a boys club, and it's like there's a commodification of this representation, but people really think that that's what we want. I wanted to drop a quick stat about the nature of whether or not Boots is woke, right? So Boots has been acquired by Walgreens in 2014, and it was controversial because it felt like an attempt at tax inversion, which is a classic move. But Walgreens themselves, in 2008, settled a lawsuit with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission that alleged that the company discriminated against African Americans for $24 million. And the settlement was split between 10,000 African American employees of the company. And as part of the agreement, they avoided any admission of guilt for it. Like, aside from, there's a lot of other things that's in here. If you just go on like if you just search Walgreens controversy, you'll get every single thing that's happened. But it's so transparent, and people are like, "Is this what you wanted? Are you happy now?" And it's like, clearly no. Clearly this wasn't. I wasn't like, I just really wish they would do a Black Mrs. Claus, and then I'd be fine, and then everything else would be okay. We can forget about capitalism destroying our lives. We can forget about asylum seekers. We can forget about Palestine. It's all solved now. Now that I've seen this one advert.
That's the thing. It's like, oh, right. Or, you know, like, as if you were a person of color and you saw a black Santa Claus, you're not going to be like, oh, well, racism solved now. But then, because you're frustrated because it's the very least, like the tiniest thing that can be done. Like, oh my God, you exist. And then on the other side, the other people are like, I'm not centered in this. So everyone's mad. Like, who's actually being played? It feels like a conspiracy of things, but it's like I said, I feel like it's, in some cases, a necessary evil. When I see an LGBTQ plus person, I'm like, well, good. That's the bare minimum. Well done for existing, and that's great. But if it's a pastiche of who we are, I'm just like, well, that's no use to me. So it's a very specific set of circumstances where things are important. But the other thing is as well, I love it when people get mad at like people of color being in, you know, like, I really like the Wheel of Time, and the cast is very like there's no specifics, and it's like I'm just like, cool, okay, and people get so mad, and they're like, but it's no, because this isn't accurate, and I'm like, babe, this is a world about
the Wheel
magic.
of Time.
Like,
it's like
about
there's magic, and it's also simultaneously the future and the past, because time is a circle in this universe. But yeah, sure, okay.
I mean, I know time doesn't exist, but why is that person not white? Because it doesn't fucking matter.
The white Wheel of Time. But I do think also, as much as this is the problem with being left, is that there's more to it. Obviously, if it comes down to the conversation of like, obviously this is being done in a very disingenuous way, it's still capitalism. It's still just a case of like appealing to audiences. I want to be very clear that that's like my conclusion from this is like, we should only have white Mrs. Clauses in adverts, because I do think there's a value to a level of representation. And also just in adverts, right? It's not as like frustrating as having like a character in a TV show that runs over like years and years and never develops any sense of like anything beyond being extremely 2D. It's an ad. It's nice to have some representation within it, but it's frustrating that people get annoyed with it on these completely pointless grounds.
No,
I don't know.
The same. It happens with, and it increasingly happens with like casting decisions on like plays, films, telly shows, really anything. And the fact of the matter is, it's like, yeah, we can talk about it's just capitalism and all the rest of it, but at the same time, I'm a working actor and I want work. And the thing is, I'm like, at the same time, like, yeah, I kind of want work. I kind of don't care about why aren't all the magic users pale like me? It's like, I don't care. Leave me alone. I am trying to bolster my goddamn CV over here. I really don't care about you and your feelings on the matter, right? Like, some bitches just want work. Maybe like a job, there was a job going, and somebody needed work, and they're like, you know what, I'm taking the gig. They're offering. Like,
Yeah, you're not going to be like, it's reductive, actually. Actually, just looking at it. But that's the other thing. That's the other part within it, is that like it's good to it's face value. It's frustrating in a lot of senses, but it's still something, right?
It's the
It's
bare
still
minimum.
better. Yeah, it's the minimum. That's the way
Yeah.
you described it earlier. I think that's fair.
It's the bare
But
minimum.
you can't
and-
even have it because everyone gets angry.
can't even
That's
have
just
it.
it.
Nah, can't have it. Nah. Can't have anybody black in Romeo and Juliet. No, we must give
Like,
them
who's
threats. Like,
who's even thinking about that as well? I remember with the Romeo and Juliet thing, and that poor actress got so much shit. And
yeah,
I like,
Francesca.
me and my boyfriend were like, why is this? Why do people even care? Oh, the authenticity. It's a fucking story, you loser. Like, why is this a thing that you're even bothering over?
See, but the thing is, even if you were to stage Shakespeare, quote unquote, traditionally, with no women on stage, then Lot would be shouting about the drag, talking about you
Exactly.
perverting the children with the drag in the traditional
Exactly.
Shakespeare.
This is unacceptable. Like, I had someone with Lord of the Rings when there was the Rings of Power. They were like,
oh god,
someone was
yeah.
like, back in those days.
What
was like,
days? There were
What
never
days?
elves.
Another
When
world.
were the days? What days were they?
Back in the
Recent-
days of yore, when elves
Yeah.
and dragons were everywhere.
It was the days of yore when all the elves.
This is
were
the
white.
problem. This is what it is. People are angry. Like, hashtag more dragons, hashtag less drag queens.
Yeah. Oh my god. I thought this was an incisive message from Michael in terms of, that was the other thing. I mean, I know we've talked about it. I've tried specifically for us to have a little bit less time for this discussion at the end with the ad.
Yeah.
But middle class showing how easy it is for them to boycott over an ad, but not a genocide. Like, I mean, because again, you know what? Like, when people did the boycott on Nike, for one of the reasons that they did the boycott on Nike, there were so many reasons at different times. But they were like, I'm boycotting Nike. And I was like, cool, good.
Oh, was it because of the child labor? No.
No,
Is
exactly.
Is it
It was
because
the
of
woke flag. It was the woke flag, or something. They were like, the
Is it
flag.
because of
the purple England
Is it
flag,
because
and
of
then
the
there was
exploitative employment practices? No.
And they're like, no.
Colin Kaepernick is in an ad.
No, they're like, no, it's woke flag, and I was like, well, I mean, get it then, I guess. Like, it was good. Like, they were like, yeah, I'm boycotting. I'm never buying from Nike again. I was like,
they're doing that now.
perfect.
They're talking about, oh, well, I guess it's super drug then. Was going to spend £89. I'm like, ooh, a whole £89. Ooh, slow down, Tiger.
I was going to get at least £30 worth of eyebrow pencils from there. Actually, and you know what? I went to Boots the other day, and obviously it was before I knew about this woke advert. I wouldn't have consciously gone in there. And I bought an eyebrow pencil, and it doesn't work. So
You see, it's the wokery afoot.
Mission failed successfully for Boots. I'm not boycotting them because of the advert. Potentially, the Boots Walgreen Alliance tax inversion would be a good reason. But anytime someone's like, "I'm boycotting this big brand," I'm like, "Yeah, okay." But I wish you'd mission failed successfully. I just wish you'd maybe unpack it a little bit further before doing so. Do we have any final thoughts? Anything that we want to throw in before we...
Can I just... There's just one thing, and I'm just going to say this. It's in the chat. Gary said, I can sit in a room and be the only white person, and I'm not bothered one bit, but if that was my life every day, I'd pine for my fellow white people, and I think that's ridiculous. Well, how do you think... Because you yourself brought up a few messages ago that like there's 10% of England is black. So how do you think it feels to be on the other side? Just like... I'm confused.
I think that might be Gary unpacking.
I'm not saying it in a judgmental way, but I'm just like maybe just flip the lens then, Gary. Like if you would feel uncomfortable, how do you think it feels to be with the shoe on the other foot? What do you think it feels like to be a gay person in a room full of straight people, a black person in a room full of white people?
And that there is the important crux of the issue. Always ask the follow-up question. They tell you that with gender, they always ask the follow-up question. Because anytime people are like, well, we don't want white people to be a minority. I'm like, what's wrong with being a minority? I mean, every time minorities talk about it, you say it's not a bad thing and that they should stop complaining. Do you treat them badly? So
yeah, do minorities have a difficult time?
What's wrong with being a minority? Is there a problem?
I wouldn't want to be... I think that might be... Gary's on a confusing journey because I'm normally pretty keen to block people. Gary has said some very strange things, but every time he's been warned, he's been like, no, you're right. It's a little bit like, like a drunk uncle at a wedding, where you're like, oh, you've got too comfortable here for a second. But I think that may potentially be Gary going, oh, maybe that's what it's like. Like, oh, I would I'd pine for my fellow white people if I was a minority in the room. That might be a moment of realization. I might be wrong. I might be giving Gary too much credit.
I just feel weird about that because I just don't really feel that like I mean maybe I do and I just don't know it and maybe I need to do work on that, but I don't think I feel that kind of like connection to like other white people in that I'd feel uncomfortable if I wasn't around them all the time.
I think it's because we're weirdos from small towns.
Maybe
I'm going to put that out as a potential theory because someone said this to me the other day about like the whole culture thing. Like, what about our culture? What about the culture issue of like immigration? And I was like, I think when you in any environment, if you grow up with a culture that feels just incredibly hostile the whole time, and if you are a little weirdo, you do feel a little bit lost on that. And it's like, especially if you're bullied as a kid, if there's any like there's like a lot of different ways to feel like alienated as a child. Obviously, being a little white kid makes it a lot easier, but I think it's very easy when you're younger to be like, I actually don't want to be I don't like any of these people that I've been around. Like my biggest exposure to British culture was like it just being horrible. And I think it was only when I was like 16, 17 and I started meeting people who weren't from my one incredibly small town. Obviously I had a few friends and stuff like that, but it's only when I started meeting people from like my husband's Romanian, right? Like the people who I feel most connected to in my life are not people who have anything in common with me in terms of that culture, except Star Trek. Which I do.
You getting paid by Big Star Trek to mention this?
Yes, the Gene Roddenberry estate deposited the check. We're on to you.
If that came knocking, I'd sell out instantly.
She'd be like, capitalism is great.
I'd be wearing a costume. In every single,
I'm surprised you're not wearing one of them under your outfit right now.
I'm dressed as like 7 of 9, ready to go.
Surprise!
Absolutely.
I literally to Davey earlier today was
I'm just gonna turn up on stream one day. You're just gonna have the forehead ridges. You're just gonna stuck some on. You'll just stuck some on. I will just do the whole stream that way.
Not even mentioning it. Like just muting commenters and just being like, yeah, and everyone's like,
yeah, of course. What are you doing with those eyebrows?
So capitalism, yes.
I will say I've started doing my eyebrows slightly differently. I don't know if anyone's noticed in the chat, but my sister, it was because I had started getting really far back. This has been a long-lasting hyperfixation for me the last couple of months. And my sister said, with the eyebrows, like, have you been doing? Were they like before Star Trek, or is that like since you've been watching more Star Trek, you started doing the Vulcan eyebrows? And I was like, I hadn't put those two together at all. But I guess my eyebrows have gone too far up in terms of shape because I just thought that they looked good.
They do look good, but they also look Vulcan.
They were getting too high. But she was like, "Oh, Dave, have you done this because you're inspired by Star Trek?" And I was like, "Nope, not doing that anymore."
You say that it was subconscious. The Star Trek has wormed its way in. You're just doing Vulcan eyebrows. You don't even realize.
Don't even notice anymore. It is
just do like 70% Star Trek, and then just finish the end off with Elrond from Lord of the Rings. And just
absolutely.
We started on Elrond at this point.
We must destroy the ring, Frodo.
We've got. What's that face? Is that your Elrond?
It's face? Elrond brows.
Such an intense stare. Oh no, they do. Yeah, they do go too far up.
Okay, you've done it now. You've mentioned Lord of the Rings. I just have to interject real quick. Aragorn and Arwen are related, right?
Right? What the hell was that about?
What?
Yeah. Okay. So basically, like Elrond has like a brother, Elros, and they're both half elven. But the way it works in Lord of the Rings is if you're the child of a human and an elf, you can pick which one you're going to be.
Yeah.
You can pick. So Elrond chose, I'm going to be a whole elf. All elf life till forever, right?
Yeah.
His brother chose humanity. And like, the race of people that Aragorn is from, the Numenorians. They're like the Middle Earth equivalent of Atlantis, basically. Like the last time there was a big war for good and evil, whole continents sank, and the only ones left are like that whole line of people descended from Elrond's brother. because like that whole lot of people that Aragorn comes from are descended from Elrond's brother. So they're like great, they're like cousins how many 100 times removed.
It's
Even
Yeah.
so.
I know.
even so.
I know.
They're even removed. And on that bombshell,
Indeed.
This is what it's going to be like. You've included me now. I'm just going to be like in here, just talking about random nerd shit at the end of everything. Like, guys,
Excellent.
did you know? Did you know
Wouldn't
that
it
in
be terrible?
Stargate SG-1, the like?
Wouldn't it be awful if there was someone who was always on the show trying to force in nerdy lore? That would be
It
terrible.
would. It would.
Chance would be a fine thing. It would be infuriating if there was someone who kept derailing the conversation to talk about lore. I need to find an outlet for it. I don't know what I need to do. I need to do something. I need to get like a separate channel or
Yeah,
something
let's do it.
it's
Let's
just
start a lore
seeping out.
channel.
Turn Trek.
Yeah. It's like seeping way too far into like the things that I'm trying to talk about that are important. And especially after we've just done a segment of like, let's talk about important stuff. Like this is all just a distraction from like the real issue. And then just drifted straight into like, but you know what does matter? I've done it twice. I did it earlier. Do you remember an hour ago when I did it the first time?
No, do you know something? Do you know what? I say it's a fair dues. I say turnaround is fair dues because you'll just click on any like random Star Wars like commentary channel now, thinking, oh, you know, a nice interesting thing, and it'll start normal enough. It'll be like, oh, hey guys, just wanted to talk about this phenomenon of things in the Star Trek films and telly shows that I've noticed. By the way, the woke feminists and they're something and you're like, whoa.
I know the specific creator that you're talking about because I've been tricked by that before.
It is most of them.
I'm like, oh, we got an hour and a half of an unpacking lore episode. Like, I'm like in. Don't even have to think about it.
Right? You just
40
think,
minutes in.
You know,
turns out he's a bastard, and I'm like,
right?
oh my god.
Right, this is the thing. You just think, oh, I'm looking for something to watch that's like 90 minutes long while I do some vacuuming or do the dishes or whatever I'm doing to just have on in the background. And then next thing you know, it's the woke SJWs, these fucking feminist bitches. And my girlfriend Wendy left me, you bitch. I always hated you. And I'm like,
my wife left me. You end up, I've almost ended up falling down the incel pipeline for it because I was like that happened to me a couple times where I was looking at Game of Thrones lore.
It's around every corner on social media. Like I am out here. No, listen, you know I'm on TikTok. I'm scared to watch baking videos for fear of going down the trad wife pipeline.
Yeah.
Oh my god,
you
yeah.
can't enjoy anything because you're like, and then TikTok will be like, oh, did you like that? Did you want to see?
Sorry, Charlotte in chat has mentioned Elden Ring lore, and I'm like, my people.
Oh shit.
Yes.
We've had our day in the sun. Now Davey's in.
I'm happy for you. I'm happy your people found you, Davey.
Yes, it's perfect. I've had the same thing though as well, I have to say, because I'm a fan of this classic video game series, The Legacy of Kain, and like, there's some creators that are really good, and then just every now and then they'll be like, "Yeah, Kain and Raziel's relationship are an allegory for homosexuality, and it's disgusting." And I'm like, "Oh,
oh no."
I will say, you don't get that as much with Star Trek. You get in Star Trek, it's really sexist. Oh, it's mega sexist and racist in Star. Like the racism in Star Trek, the first series is awful. But the fans, because the whole fandom was built out of a bunch of like science women who were like, make them gay, we love it, make them kiss. It's evolved as like one of the less toxic communities. The Big Bang Theory was an unfair representation. It was a reductive representation. I feel strongly about that.
Okay, fine. Noted. Duly noted.
Someone commented saying I thought she was going to do the Vulcan salute.
Fair enough. Like I'm just gonna say this right now. Like for posterity, let it be known I am an anti-nerd nerd. I like nerd shit. I hate fandom shit. I'm like, listen. Right, your fanfic over there with the other fanfickers.
Keep yourself
leave
busy.
This shit out of it. Like
someone, Jay has said in the chat, can we do a turn left watch along of Andor?
You know something,
oh my
you
God,
theoretically
yes.
could. I have the show spoiled for me, but I know that there's a lot of like talk of like, you know, leftist points in there. Thingies, stuff.
Sprinkled in.
Mm-hmm.
Could be a pipeline. Maybe it is woke. Chance to be a fine thing. I think, guys, it's probably time for us to call it a day on this chat. Not that I don't want to, like, I mean, we can end the live and just keep chatting about this.
Yeah.
But I will. But I think we have come through our key topics. It has been really, really fun. It's been really good as well. I think there's been a lot of interesting conversations in the chat. Some very entertaining, some a little bit concerning, but it feels like a bit of a learning experience for a lot of different people, hopefully, based on what we've seen. I'm going to drop from the Turn Left channel in the chat. You can follow all three of us. I've put our TikToks in, but is there anything else that either of you would like to highlight?
I have a blog that I write on called Politically Enraged. It's like, I think that my writing's pretty good. I don't want anything from you. It's just a place where I go, this is me ranting about how terrible everything is and using some big words. You don't have to check it out, but if you do, then great, thank you.
I am dropping that in the chat.
Great.
As we speak.
I just chat shit on TikTok. I'm thinking of foraying into book talk, but like under like something like hashtag slow readers club, because people will be like blitzing through books. I swear sometimes they'll be like reading book. Hang on, I'll just get a book to like demonstrate real quick. Hang on. I swear, like sometimes they'll be reading and they'll be like, yeah, guys, I finished it in a week. But then now that they've been talking about reading ain't political, I'm like, what? Did you read the book like this? Like, just done, guys. What an amazing read. And I'm like,
easy.
No. So yeah, I'm just chatting shit on the TikTok. I'm an actor. I'm in stuff, not right now, but like, hang on. I do have a thing that you can promote. My entire Dark Gallifrey trilogy is out. Yeah. I literally, like, it all finally came out. It's the final ones that David Warner did, the Unbound Doctor, and it's in the Dark Gallifrey like set, and it's with the War Master, so Derek Jacobi's in it as well, and yeah, like Dark Gallifrey, I'm in it. Like they sent me physical copies. Like it's these. I'm in them as a disembodied, like, spatial temporal anomaly that alters people's reality to like fuck with them. So that's dope. I get to torment the Doctor. Like I'm in it as the Abomination. So yeah, that's any way you can get Big Finish stuff. Like, so yeah.
That is amazing. Okay, that's actually sick. So it's Dark Gallifrey, the War Master.
Yeah, like the War Master, like Dark Gallifrey.
I'm dropping that in.
Yeah, Dark Gallifrey, the War Master.
And then we have one last question for you from Charlotte, which is, you were saying earlier that
the deadlift.
Yeah, what is your deadlift personal best? I will say mine is probably 5 kilograms.
Woo! Anything's better than nothing. Lift the heavy shit.
I am in the early days. Davey, do you deadlift?
Yeah, well, I did before the chronic stuff, but yeah, I only did 60. Only 60 on deadlift.
60?
Yeah.
Tariye?
Let's see. In my current, well, I can do. I don't know. I'm not tracking it at the moment actively. Maybe I should. But what I managed to lift last Wednesday was about. Hang on. The bar weighed 50. I think 45 kilos.
Oh,
I wasn't expecting both of you to actually have an answer.
Oh, before my body decided to turn against me, I was a fitness freak. Now I'm just a freak.
Super freak. You're super
freaky.
Unfortunately, what has felt like an injustice and very unfair of us, considering looking at us, how we were sitting there talking about intersectionality, asking like we knew what was up, and yet somehow Davey the white man stayed in the box of privilege all stream in the end. He got that top spot the entire time. And Tariye had to do this all the time. Wow. So much for the tolerant left. With that, I am going to close us out. Thank you all so much again for watching. And thank you both for joining. It has been very, very fun. We will have the stream up. Like, it literally, we'll have a couple of minutes now where it's got the outro. If anyone can keep the tab open, keep the video open for a little bit, and then just when it does refresh as like the actual recording, very much appreciated if you can leave a comment, leave a like, anything like that. Thank you all for joining us, and we will see you again next Sunday. I'm actually going to be back on Wednesday interviewing Femi, which I know is going to be an exciting conversation. So we'll see you next Wednesday. We'll also see you the Sunday following. Also see you Mondays and Fridays as other parts of the team. Thank you both so much again, and looking forward to having you back on again soon. Bye, everyone. Sorry for all the Star Trek stuff.